Hey, what's up, friends? You got Gypsy back here today for ITL semi-finals up against SheerForce, aka Trevor. Yeah, getting right into it. This is hype. Like semi-finals are here. We've seen some amazing playoff games. I uploaded them earlier with Aki. We saw Sebastian take on Trevor in the semi-finals, with Trevor coming out on top. Then we saw Zamcro and Nick in the other conference. That was definitely hype. I feel like both games were really hype. There was some unfortunate hacks in Trevor's game, but I feel like overall the standard of playoffs has been really high. So yeah, I was definitely hyped for this game. Trevor and I played a couple of weeks ago in the regular season, where he brought Rain plus banned Kabutops as well as Nido King to really just threaten my defensive core, which was really solid. I felt as though if he did bring Rain this time, I had really nice ways to check that. If you guys did miss that game, it's on my channel. It'll be in the ITL playlist, so feel free to go and check that out if you guys have missed any of my games. But yeah, we come into playoffs looking pretty solid. We're number one in the league, and hence the first round bye, which is why we're starting in the semi-finals. But Trevor, he's not to be slept on. I felt like he's definitely made a really solid improvement. He really turned around his performance halfway through the season and just made a real charge for playoffs. So I'm definitely hyped for this match. He has a lot of threats as well. Like he's got the Mew, so yeah, one of the best ones in the format, no doubt. He's got stuff like Nido King on his team, as I mentioned earlier, which really pressures my team. Beware, so fighting types are just really solid versus me in general. Fighting types with ice coverage really just dent my team. Granted, Quillfish is a pretty solid switch in, but stuff like Earthquake and Bandit Return exists, so yeah, Beware's a bit of a spooky threat. Gudra is definitely a nice pivot into stuff like Thunderous and Suicune, so he has ways of soaking up the special hits, as well as potentially being a rain setter, but nothing really capitalizes from rain on his team, so I don't think it's going to be a rain dance Gudra, probably more of an assault vest variant, or maybe even like a lefties variant, just to allow him to have that longevity over the course of the game if he doesn't have any other form of recovery. So then we have Zorok. Definitely interesting mon. I feel like Zorok is solid versus me in the sense that he can disguise it as a defensive mon like Bronzong and get a huge hit off if it's like Bandit knockoff or SD. It could be Specs, Dark Pulse, something like that. Yeah, Zorok looking pretty threatening in this matchup. Just at face value on paper. Then we have Bronzong, pretty standard like Lele check. Also Couples is a nice Landorus check. I think Bronzong is one of the best mons this gen in terms of being a utility steal pick. I feel like I know I used it in the March Madness still, and it's just unreal. Like the fact that it's levitate, the fact that it checks a lot of the new fairies, it's just so good. Like it's slept on, but Bronzing is actually pretty solid. Nice trick room abuser as well. Then we have Whimsicott, probably one of his ways of checking Coon. He could also be some sort of like setup assist variant with Memento. That was my thought going into the match. I do expect Mew to be more than likely a setup variant of Mew. He's brought last time versus me he brought SD, I believe, or Nasty Plot. I think it was SD. And yeah, I believe it was SD. He's known to bring a lot of setup Mews, and setup Mew versus me, in particular the Carmine Psyshock set, is amazing. I have a Coon here, which obviously Carmine Coon is a big threat to a lot of teams. Carmine Psyshock Roost Mew beats it 1v1, so that's a pretty solid response to that. It's also a really solid win con. If you look at my team, like Psyshock Earth Power, Bolt Beam, Ice Beam, T-Bolt, either of those options are really nice versus my team, and because I do have the Muck on my team, I feel like Earth Power Psyshock is a little bit better. It also allows him to hit Registeel for super effective damage so he doesn't get toxic. But Bolt Beam could also come. That was definitely a thought I had. Anyway, going over the team that I've brought, you guys see Shuckle chilling there. I haven't brought Shuckle since week 5. He's only made one appearance this season, but it's playoffs, so I'm out here. I'm trying to win this. I'm trying to win this championship. So we got nice webs. Shout out to NJMP, just the webs master. But yeah, Shuckle is here, and if you look at his team, he doesn't actually have removal outside of Defog Mew. He did have Kabutops on his team, but as you can see, we've got the Decidueye there, so nice Cobble Berry Decidueye, nice Spin Blocker on deck. If he is Defog Mew, then he's not Carmine Roost Psyshock, which is really nice. Or he could be mono attacking, but with Defog. But I feel like then he misses out on a way to hit Registeel and Muck. So I really highly doubt that's the case. I feel like a setup variant is far better versus me. if he is Defog Mew, then his team is very passive. His only real breakers would be Beware, or win conditions, I guess you could say, would be Beware, potentially Curse Gudra, and SD, Zarok. So I don't think that's the case. I feel like Mew is definitely offensive, but you never know. We have ways of preventing his Mew from defogging, if possible, threatening it offensively. So then we have, so I've mentioned we have Sharkle. I'm going to start at the start with Lando. So first up we have Landorus. Nice Scarf Lando. The reason I'm Scarf is because if you bring Scarf Nidoking, which is actually a pretty solid bring versus me, yes, Life Orb punches amazing holes through teams, but Scarf Nidoking is a solid revenger for stuff like my Lele, like a non-Scarf Lele, a non-Scarfed Landorus, obviously. Pretty nice for Decidueye as well. I can get a nice Earth Power off on a faster Cobalion. It's not the best set versus me, and I definitely don't think he should bring it, but in case he does, having my Landorus here plus the webs allows me to outspeed a Scarfed variant of Nidoking. So if I had brought, because I am adamant, if I'd brought an adamant Landorus and he'd brought a Timid Scarf Nidoking with webs up, I don't guarantee to outspeed, and this Landorus is my win condition. So adamant Scarf Landorus here, his only resist to ground or his only immunity to ground is the Bronzong. His Whimsicott resists ground, but Whimsicott isn't the best adamant Landorus switch in, so he also risks taking a potential Z-Fly or a U-turn. He doesn't really want to take those hits, and it is going to be pressured by my Suicune. So Landorus looking like a pretty clean win con in a sense. If I can just weaken down Bronzong, and his Mew is like a really offensive set, then I should be able to 2-hit KO it with EQ after rocks and spikes damage. If I can get a poison off, that'd be clean too. So then we have my defensive Decidueye. This is, as I mentioned earlier, my way of checking his Kabutops spinning versus me. It also is a pretty nice check to Kabutops, because with webs up, even Jolly Kabutops is outsped by my Decidueye spread. I do have a bit of speed investment to creep that speed point that Kabutops hits. I have Leaf Blades, which just blow back Kabutops. I've got SD and Spirit Shackle. I can SD up on stuff like Bronzong, get a nice hit off on anything on his team, because nothing outside of Beware is immune to Spirit Shackle. So if he hadn't brought Beware, Spirit Shackle would have been really free versus his team. Zarok doesn't appreciate coming in and taking Spirit Shackle. It's going to do a lot because Zarok is frail, and Decidueye is really strong. Like its stats don't really look strong, but it's pretty potent as a physical attacker. Then we have my Carmine Rescoon. Contemplated a few different sets for this Suicune, but ultimately Carmine Rescoon Crocoon is the best variant I can bring versus his team in case he does decide to bring Nidoking. He can set up versus a Nidoking with the webs up. I do outspeed. +1 Coon Oko's Nidoking, so it's just a really nice response to his potential slower offensive threats under webs, and it's a really nice win con just with rest, stalling out stuff like Mew. I can beat it 1v1 unless he is Carmine Psyshock, in which case that's a different story and I have to rely on different means to beating that, like my Decidueye and my Landorus. Then we have my Swords Dance Air Balloon Cobalion. This thing is rocking. it's a fun set. Because I'm Air Balloon, I can come in on stuff like Nidoking lacking Flamethrower, which he doesn't really need versus my team because he has Earth Power and Ice Beam, Sludge Wave, Rocks, or something like that. I can come in, I can Magnet Rise, I can SD up. If my balloon is popped, I can Magnet Rise. I can SD up, and I do have X-Scissor on this set, so I can blow back an offensive Mew +2 after rocks with X-Scissor. If he's a defensive set, he's going to be taking it better, obviously, but he's not going to appreciate a +2 X-Scissor. It will 2-hit KO comfortably, and if I can get up to +4, I just Oko. And this set can just punch the holes I need against this team for stuff like my Landorus to win, as well as my Suicune. So yeah, pretty solid switching to stuff like Gudra that isn't clicking Fire Blast. And I can threaten out instantly with a close combat. If he lets his Gudra get weakened, then my Suicune just has an easier time versus his team. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the webs on Shuckle. Nice webs, rocks. Got Encore and Toxic, which allows me to beat a Defog Mew 1v1 and ensure I get at least one layer of hazards up. I can suicide off my Shuckle in that scenario and ensure that I get my webs up, which are clutch. Allowing my Landorus to outspeed the Zarok if he's a Scarf Zarok. But he has brought a pretty slow team. He could potentially be Trick Room. That's something I was thinking at matchup. He could be Trick Room Mew or Trick Room Bronzong plus Banded Breaker Beware, which would have been pretty interesting. Although I do have a cool fish in the back, which I can allow. I can switch that in and scout his set. Then so we then have Cool Fish hit. I'm running a lot of health in this max attack, almost max HP. I've got enough speed to outrun Timid Nidoking under webs. I can OHKO it with Waterfall because I am offensive, but I do have Black Sludge, which allows me to like kind of pretend that I am, or kind of gives the impression to my opponent that I am a defensive set, because you don't often see like max attack recovery item Cool Fish. It's just not that common, and I have never run offensive Cool Fish in this league yet. I've only ever run defensive with Spikes. I do have Explosion on this set, which allows me to block a defog from Mew. I do creep max speed Timid Mew with this Cool Fish after webs. A lot of calcs went into this team, and I can get the Explosion off versus a likely defog Mew if I expect him to defog that turn, and then revenge with something like Landorus or my Decidueye. So that is the team. I spent a lot of time in this team, a lot of different iterations of this team, but this is the team I finally settled with, and I feel like, yeah, it can definitely do the job. So we're gonna jump into this match. I'm going to lead with my Shuckle here, pretty obviously. He loads his Whimsicott, he taunts me, but I do have that Mental Herb. So I'm just going to fire off my webs turn 1. This turn, I expected him to predict me to predict him to taunt. So I'm just going to stand here and set up my rocks as he does Toxic me there, predicting my switch out there on the likely taunt. So he may predict me to go into my, like, I don't know, anything there really, like probably my Decidueye that turn. As now I can just make the switch out to my Cool Fish, knowing that he kind of has to click Encore here or taunt. He can't risk my Shuckle, you know, Toxicking his Whimsicott here. So I'm just going to switch out. Going to go into my Cool Fish here, as he does choose to go for the taunt. Now I know he's probably going to switch out here. He's probably going to go out into his. I don't actually have Poison Jab on this Cool Fish, so that is another thing. I am Spikes, Explosion, Waterfall, and Aqua Jet on this set. So I kind of bluffed there that I do have the Poison Jab, as this turn he is going to switch out to his Bronzong. I believe I do make a double this turn by going out into my Decidueye here. So what that allowed me to do was scout for Leech Seed, because if he was sub Leech Seed Toxic, that could have been really a cancerous set to verse with my Cool Fish, because I don't have Poison Jab. And it also bluffs the fact that I still may have Poison Jab, and I double predicting his Bronzong to switch in. So Decidueye kind of covered both plays in that sense. So he's going to bring in his Bronzong here. I do believe I just go for the Spirit Shackle this turn, as he does bring in his Beware to resist it. Now he doesn't show to have lefty, so this is more than likely a offensive Beware. Could be some sort of resist berry, like a psychic resist berry, even though this thing still gets blown back by Lele. Could be a fairy resist berry, could be anything. Could potentially be a ban variant. Now this is actually a recreate, because in the first time we played, it's turn 6. In the first time we played, Trev clicked return, and he crit my Cool Fish, and it OHKO'd me. Now the reason we recreated, Trev was a really good guy and agreed to recreate because he didn't want hacks. He didn't want hacks in such a pivotal game. The reason the crit was so pivotal is because not only the fact that I lost my Cool Fish, it wasn't so much that, it was the fact that because he crit, this Beware is in fact banded, and the damage tells me that, the 72% tells me that, but the fact that he crit means that I couldn't determine his set, which meant that I would have had to play around it very differently in the game had we played on from that point. I was okay to play on, but Trev insisted we did restart because you know, I said it was up to him. I wasn't going to tell him to restart because that is part of the game, but you know, I've been lucked like every single game, so Trev wanted a clean game, and I can definitely respect him for that. So we do recreate, and that damage there does definitely point out that he is banded. Now, at this point in the game, I said to Trev, if I get some bullshit crit on you, we are restarting, recreating. It's only fair, and we agreed from that and just played forward from now. So, thankfully, that is not the case. You guys are going to see. So, he's going to switch out this turn, or I'm going to switch out, I should say, into my Decidueye, knowing that he is indeed banded and locked into return. So Decidueye is pretty free here, as he's now going to bring in Bronzong, and Bronzong, I'm not quite sure what he expected there. He may have expected me to go for the Destiny Bond or something, but Decidueye was my switch there, and now I can SD up on his switch out this turn. I want to get damage off on that Decidueye. but he's going to stay in here and go for his rocks. So now I'm in a position where his Bronzong needs to switch out. He can't risk staying in here, otherwise he loses his only switch into Landorus' EQ. So that's definitely a nice position to be in. I'm going to click Leaf Blade here because his Bronzong isn't staying in. If anything, he's switching out to Beware, and I can get a nice chunk of damage off. Even though Beware's ability is going to make Leaf Storm do absolutely nothing, it's still going to be nice to get that chip off, putting in a range of Landorus' Earthquake later in the game. I'm going to click Leaf Blade here as he does go out to his Mew, which is in fact his Rourke, and this thing is going to get blown back by Leaf Blade. So that is one less threat to think about. Now my team just outspeeds his entire team now, apart from Whimsicott potentially. If he's like a really fast Whimsicott, stuff like McQuillfish may not outspeed it, but he's going to now bring in his Beware. Because I am defensive, I can take an Ice Punch even though he's banded. So I do take this opportunity just to scout what he wants to lock himself into and just click Leaf Blade because I know I can live. He's going to go for Ice Punch here. No, I don't really have a reason to sack my Decidueye at this point. I am Roost, so I can Roost up on stuff like the Whimsicott as long as he doesn't quick Taunt. I can also Roost up on the Bronzong as I do naturally outspeed this. So I'm going to make the switch out to my Quillfish here, knowing I can live an Ice Punch if he did want to click that. He's going to make the switch out to his Whimsicott this turn, and again he's going to be fearful of the Poison Jab, which he should be because Quillfish shouldn't be walled by Whimsicott, although I am. So I do have Explosion, but I'm not going to click it because I know that he's either going to stay in the Taunt or he's going to go out into his Bronzong. Likely go out to his Bronzong. If he loses this, then he loses another way of checking my Suicune, or he loses another way of allowing his setup Mew to set up versus me with a potential Memento. So I'm going to go for Spikes here, which is going to really aid me in wearing down his team. Spikes go in versus his team if you see, because every mon is taking 12 from the Spikes, then the respective amounts from the Stealth Rocks. So that is going to be really solid. As he brings in the Bronzong here, I am going to switch out because I don't want to stay in here and take an Earthquake or a Zen Headbutt. As I go into my Cobalion here, he's going to go for Psychic and he's going to crit me here. Another unfortunate crit, but I wasn't, this matters in the sense that like you'll see how much this matters, but it's all good. Like it's all good. It's just part of the game. So this turn I am going to stay in a quick close combat. Had he not crit me, I would have been able to SD this turn, being able to live a second Psychic and fire for +2 close combat versus anything on his team. I would have been able to really weaken this Bronzong, but I'm only unfortunately going to be able to get a close combat off. That's fine. That's just part of the game. So I'm used to it by now in the ITL. So my Cobalion is going to go down here. It's going to allow me to bring my Landorus, and because I am Scarf knockoff, I can Oko this Landorus, this Bronzong from this range of health, and I know he's probably not going to want to risk that, but I have no reason not to make this play as I do knock off any item on his team, which is going to be essential. If this is Lefty's Whimsicott, then I knock that off, which is really nice for my Suicune. He actually turns out to be Yachi Berry, so he may have feared like a Carmine Ice Beam Suicune, which makes a lot of sense. Either way, that item is gone now, so I'm gonna switch out to my Quillfish here as he fires off the Memento. So interesting set. This is gonna allow his Mew to come in and his Goodra to come in this turn. I felt as though he would go out into his Mew there. He deliberated on this turn for a long time. I think he spent 1 minute deciding what he'd go into, so I felt as though he could potentially be trying to scout if my Mew had taunt, if my Quillfish had taunt, because if he went out to his Mew and tried to set up in my face and I taunted him, he'd be in a pretty bad position. He kind of would have wasted his Memento for nothing, but he's going to bring in his Goodra here, and my Quillfish is now at it's at -2 attack, but I can just fire off the Explosion and just do a shit ton to this Goodra. Keeping Quillfish around there wasn't really necessary. I could have boomed on the Mew, which would have been nice, but booming on the Goodra was more important in my opinion, because now I can just click knock off and get a kill. As if he wants to leave the Goodra in, it's going to go down, which it does. We knock off the lefties, so Carmine Suicune is looking in a pretty solid position now. If you look at his team, like the only way he can beat it is with Carmine Mew, so taking out the 2 Coon checks is really nice. I'm going to bring in my Shuckle here as he fires off an Ice Beam. So he's Ice Beam and he's not an item, so he's probably a Z Crystal. This is his only Z Crystal holder on his team, and the fact that he goes for Carmine here kind of reveals that he's definitely like a Carmine offensive Mew, or some sort of Carmine Z attacking Mew, because Z status moves are banned in our league. So I'm going to go for Encore here, locking him into his Carmine move, as now I can just go out to my Landorus this turn. I want to scout the damage on this Mew. I want to determine its set. If he's an offensive variant, I can 2-hit KO with Earthquake from this range of health. But he's going to switch this turn. He's going to go into his Bronzong here, as I do believe I clicked knockoff, and that is going to take out the Bronzong. So he's now in a position where his Mew is going to come back very weak after taking both the round of spikes and rocks, and potentially die to my knockoff. I'm not going to leave my Landorus in here though. I know knockoff is obviously not going to do a thing to this Beware, and Landorus is a pretty nice win con. You know, firing off powerful Earthquakes versus the Mew. I can't knock off his item, but I can fire off powerful Earthquakes. He makes a nice double into Mew here. As I switch out into my Suicune. Now, this was, I did expect him to make a potential double there. Going into the Shuckle there guaranteed that I put myself in a solid position, because if Beware clicked Ice Punch and took out my Shuckle, I got to switch into my Suicune to start Carmining up. If he made the double into Mew, I force him to attack me because I can lock him into a move with Encore or just click Toxic, which will put him on a timer that he does not want. So in a pretty solid position, although he is in a pretty solid position as well, as now he has the Mew back in, but it is pretty low. So I'm going to go for Encore this turn, as he will take me out with Ice Beam here. And I can now bring in my Landorus once again. I could have gone out into my Decidueye, I could have gone out into my Suicune and started Carmining up, but I just got into my Landorus, wanting to determine his set. I can click EQ. If he takes me out with Ice Beam, then my Suicune wins the game with Scald. If he goes for Roost, I determine his set. I see how much damage my Earthquake does, and then I can play accordingly from there. So I'm going to go for Earthquake. It only does 42 to this Mew as he roosts up, so this is definitely a defensive Mew. He's got Roost, Carmine, Ice Beam, more than likely packing the T-Bolt as a means of hitting, you know, stuff like my Registeel, my Suicune, my Quillfish, and the Cobalion. So pretty nice set. Defensive Mew, probably not too fast. Probably just like max HP, max defense. Judging by the way it took Adamant Landor's Earthquake. So I'm going to switch out here, add it to my Suicune, and we're going to start Carmining up. If his Mew is Psyshock, then it's looking pretty bad for my Coon. But because I do have Carmine and I do outspeed, I can, you know, start to Carmine up in this thing's face. He fires off a Gigavolt Havoc. It does 40, a decent chunk of damage. I'm just going to start firing off Scalds here. I get a burn, which is pretty nice. It's going to whittle down the Mew, allowing my Suicune to, you know, rest up and have that residual damage firing off versus the Mew if I do decide to do that. I'm going to start spamming Scald here. This is interesting. Like his Mew is definitely, like, it's slower than me. It's probably losing this 1v1, but if he continues to Carmine up, I could be in a pretty bad position. I'm gonna start Carmining up myself, wanting to get my you know, match our stats. What I'm fearing is a potential Thunderbolt crit on his behalf, as like I mentioned, I've been frozen in most of my games, and I definitely don't want to lose the game that way. So I'm going to start firing off Scalds in an effort to just keep him low. If I can keep him low enough, my Landorus can come in and revenge with Earthquake or U-turn, as Beware will also die from an Earthquake at the range of health that he's at after Hazard. So his Mew's gonna continue roosting up. It's now a whole 2 stages ahead of me in terms of stats. And yeah, my Suicune's only doing 16%, so this is looking pretty bad. It seems I've let this Mew get out of control. I've really let it set up too far, and you know, that's really on me. I really could have just Calm-minded up to +6 and started resting in this thing's face. PP stored out his Thunderbolts, but you know, unfortunately I have let this Mew get out of control, and now the fact that he is at +6, his T-Bolts are going to be doing quite a lot to me. I'm only at +4. His T-Bolt does 38, so yeah, it's doing quite a lot. And if he crits me here, if he does crit me while I'm asleep and he's at a high enough range of health, I'm not going to be able to revenge my Landorus. So that's not a situation I want to allow. I am just going to start spamming Scald, as if I can get him to around 50, then I can revenge him with my Landorus' Earthquake or U-turn. He's going to take me out here though with a T-Bolt, and this is not looking good because his Mew is now at +6, and we saw Earthquake only did like 40, I think it was like 41 or 42% earlier versus this Mew, so this is pretty bad. If I were him, I'd probably roost here, just judging what I want to lock myself into. If I were him, I'd expect me to go for U-turn and switch in my Decidueye. sacking it off to the Ice Beam and then revenging with Earthquake the following turn because he'd then be in range of an Earthquake. So I definitely click Roost here if I were my opponent, but he could just as easily click Ice Beam on my Landorus's EQ, which would allow his Beware to revenge my Decidueye if his Mew did die to my Decidueye's Spirit Shackle. So yeah, it's looking pretty bad. Like kind of like demoralizing because we had such a good season up to this point. Yeah, you know, I really thought I'd make it to finals. So it's tough, but you know, it is the game it is. Like my opponent played really well, and so I'm just gonna pull out the punishment here and blow this Mew back. I'm just playing, and Beware is gonna come in here. I'm just gonna sack off my Decidueye and win with Landorus's EQ. So that was a very fun game. I was kind of obviously playing around there, but basically the thought process with the way I played my Coon was I wanted to lull him into a false sense of security that he would win the game with Mew. I didn't want my Coon to you know, rest up and potentially get crit by T-Bolt. I didn't want to fuck with crits. I wanted to keep him at a range of health where he would 100% die to the punishment. Because he was at +6/+6, he was always going to be in range of punishment, and I just wanted to speed up the process by getting my Landorus in with his Mew. You know, I didn't want him to scout. I didn't want to switch out and scout, and there was no reason for him to. If he switched out, then his Beware was going to get 2-hit KO'd by, or just OHKO'd by Earthquake, and my Decidueye could win the game at that point, because although Mew would knock my Landorus out, I do have SD and Roost on my Decidueye, and I do outspeed the Mew, so we pull out the punishment there, catch Trev. I don't blame him for not expecting that. You never see punishment on Landorus, but that particular Mew set, as I mentioned in the team breakdown, was extremely threatening versus my team. So this Scarf Landorus was packing punishment was indeed a really fine lure, because the fact that it shown knockoff earlier in the game, you know, Landorus don't really run like double dark stab all that often, if ever. So yeah, stoked to see punishment come through there. Definitely a very fun game. A lot of mind games in that game. I know I really enjoyed this one, and Trev had a great time. I think he mentioned it after the game. That was one of the funnest games he'd played in a long time. So definitely props to my man Trev. It was definitely a fun game. Go check him out. I'll leave his link in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed. This takes us on to finals, where we face off against Zamcro, which should be a really fun game. He's definitely got a threatening team, and yeah, we'll see what we bring in finals. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, drop a like and let me know what you guys thought in the comments, and I'll catch you guys next time.